Most horror games throw monsters at you that are big, loud, and stupid. Nemesis is none of those things. Well, okay, he's big and loud, but stupid? Not even close. In 1999, Capcom created something that fundamentally changed what a video game enemy could be, and every stalker-type enemy you've seen since owes this thing a debt. So let's break down every single form Nemesis has ever taken, starting with the one that traumatized an entire generation. Nemesis T-Type, classic first form. Here's what makes the original Nemesis so unsettling. It's not that he's a 7-foot monster. Resident Evil had plenty of those. It's that he's a 7-foot monster wearing business casual, black overcoat, gloves, boots, trousers. The creature looks like it's about to attend a very aggressive job interview. The designers at Capcom deliberately dressed Nemesis in clothing that would preserve a human silhouette, something just familiar enough to make your brain say that's a person before the rest of you screams that is absolutely not a person. Underneath all that fabric is where it gets genuinely horrifying. The Nemesis T-Type starts as a T103 Tyrant, which is already a nightmare on its own, but then Umbrella Europe grafted an NE Alpha Parasite directly onto the thing's brainstem. The parasite essentially replaces the entire nervous system, hijacking motor control, cognitive function, all of it. The result is a bioweapon with human-level intelligence and self-awareness, not instinct, not programming, actual tactical thinking. In a franchise built on shambling corpses that walk into walls, this thing can problem solve. The parasite's secretions chemically alter the host body's surface, producing that signature brown staining across any exposed flesh. Looks like someone left a bodybuilder in a swamp for 6 months. But those same secretions also grant regenerative properties that exceed standard Tyrant healing, which is not ideal for anyone trying to kill it. And then there's the rocket launcher, a specially modified FIM-92 Stinger, mounted on its left arm, operated with the kind of dexterity you really don't want a biological abomination to have. This thing can close distance on you in seconds and then fire a rocket at you, just in case the 7-foot mutant sprinting at you wasn't enough. But the detail that really sells the horror is the voice. Nemesis can speak, barely. One word, repeated over and over. S-T-A-R-S. The name of the elite police unit it was programmed to eliminate. It knows who you are, and it will not stop saying your unit's name while it chases you across every single block of Raccoon City without ever getting tired. That's not a monster. That's a coworker who won't leave you alone. Except this one has a rocket launcher and no concept of personal space. The whole design philosophy was built around avoiding the mindless beast archetype. Capcom wanted something that could use weapons intelligently, track prey with tactical purpose, and maintain pursuit indefinitely. Every version of Nemesis that came after this one is essentially trying to recapture what this first form nailed perfect, a corrupted human shape. Just smart enough to be terrifying, just vocal enough to be wrong. But as scary as the first form is, at least it's still wearing clothes. The second form, not so much. Nemesis T-Type, classic second form. So the first form of Nemesis is terrifying because it thinks. It stalks you, it fires rockets at you, it makes decisions. But eventually, you throw enough explosions, enough rocket fire, enough flamethrower fuel at this thing, and something breaks. Not the creature itself, the coat. The protective overcoat gets shredded through accumulated combat trauma, and that's when the NE Alpha Parasite inside makes a calculation that changes everything. See, the parasite's whole job up to this point has been keeping Nemesis functional as a humanoid weapon, repairing damage, maintaining structure, preserving that terrifying intelligence. But when the damage overwhelms even its enhanced regeneration, the parasite essentially panics. It triggers an emergency evolutionary adaptation, and the result is one of the most unsettling transformations in Resident Evil history. The coat comes off, and what's underneath is wrong. Everything about the sleek, almost professional appearance of the first form gets stripped away. The parasite's regeneration has gone into overdrive, producing grotesque masses of exposed tissue and mutated flesh. The humanoid frame is still there, still bipedal, but now you can see exactly what's been hiding under that coat. Twisted musculature, exposed tendons, raw, glistening tissue where skin used to be. It looks like someone peeled the wrapper off a nightmare. The claws become more pronounced, capable of devastating swipes that cover serious distance. Tendrils and fleshy growths erupt across the body, giving the whole thing an organic, almost tumorous appearance. It's not a soldier anymore. It's a walking wound that refuses to die. Here's where it gets interesting, though. That single single visible eye? Still there, still locked onto you. And somehow that's worse now because the rest of the face has degraded into something barely recognizable as human, but that eye is still tracking you with the same horrible focus, which is, not ideal. But here's the thing that makes this form so fascinating from a design perspective: the trade-off. The parasite made a desperate survival calculation, and the math was brutal. Sacrifice intelligence for raw lethality, sacrifice tactical flexibility for overwhelming physical power. The rocket launcher? Gone. The ability to strategically track and corner prey through the city? Gone. The creature that once hunted you like a professional assassin now charges at you with reckless aggression, all brute strength and speed and zero finesse. It's simultaneously the most physically dangerous and least psychologically scary version of Nemesis. The first form had you checking every corridor, listening for footsteps, dreading the moment it appeared with a rocket launcher aimed at your face. This form just rushes you. Terrifying in the moment, sure, but it's predictable. It doesn't think the way it used to. It doesn't plan. It doesn't say stars in that horrible broken voice. It just attacks whatever's closest and hopes that's enough. And honestly, for most things in Raccoon City, it absolutely would be enough. Its claws can tear through just about anything you'd care to hide behind. The regeneration that was already absurd in the first form is now operating without any restraint whatsoever, rebuilding tissue faster than you can destroy it, but it traded its brain for its muscles. And if you think losing intelligence is the worst thing that can happen to Nemesis, wait until you see what the final form sacrifices just to stay alive. Nemesis, T-type, classic final form. So at this point, Nemesis has already lost its coat, its weapons, its intelligence, and basically every shred of anything that once made it look even remotely human. You'd think that would be rock bottom. Turns out no. Rock bottom has a basement, and that basement has a sub-basement, and Nemesis just ate everything in both of them. The classic final form emerges inside the incineration disposal plant P12A, and the way it gets there is genuinely one of the most disturbing transformation mechanics in the entire franchise. After the second form gets dumped into the corrosive chemical environment of the disposal plant, a place specifically designed to dissolve bioweapons as powerful as tyrants, the creature doesn't die. It adapts. It survives submersion and waste that was engineered to destroy things exactly like it, and instead of dissolving into nothing, it begins consuming everything around it to fuel yet another mutation. Damage doesn't kill this thing. Damage makes it hungrier, which is, not ideal. But here's where it gets truly disgusting. While sitting in this chemical nightmare, Nemesis starts absorbing organic matter from dead zombies and hunters scattered around the disposal facility. It's literally eating other bioweapons and infected remains to fuel its own growth. The Alpha parasite has completely abandoned any attempt to maintain a cohesive physical structure. No more bipedal movement, no more quadrupedal movement, no more movement at all in any traditional sense. Instead, the parasite redirects everything toward maximizing raw biomass and tentacular weapon systems through consumption-based mutation. The result is a massive slug-like cocoon that peels open to reveal a room-filling monstrosity with tentacled appendages anchoring its body throughout the entire arena. You're not fighting an enemy anymore. You're standing inside one. The creature essentially becomes a living environment that you have to navigate within the context of its own body. Multiple weak points are spread across this enormous mass, and the tentacle anchoring means traditional movement-based evasion becomes almost useless. You can't outrun something that is the room. It still retains remnants of the previous form's head and exposed jaw structure, just blown up to dramatically enlarged proportions. Multiple rows of teeth line that jaw, each one capable of instantly killing a human through a single bite. The original mission to eliminate STARS members? Completely irrelevant by this point. Whatever program directive once drove this creature has been buried under layers of pure, biological hunger. This isn't a weapon anymore. It's just a mass of consumption and regeneration that happens to be very, very angry. Here's the thing that makes this form genuinely terrifying from a design perspective. Every previous Nemesis mutation traded something for something. The second form lost intelligence but gained speed and raw strength. This final form trades literally everything. Mobility, tactical thinking, even basic structural integrity. For one thing, the inability to die. The parasite's refined biological control systems appear compromised. The rapid recovery that protected earlier stages is degraded, but the sheer volume of biomass and the distributed nature of its body means you can't just shoot it in one spot and call it a day. You have to systematically dismantle something that fills an entire room while it's actively trying to eat you. And remember, this thing survived a disposal system specifically built to destroy creatures like it. So good luck figuring figuring out what actually works, but at least the classic Nemesis stayed confined to a PlayStation. Wait until you hear what Hollywood decided to do with this creature, because the movie version of Nemesis has a backstory that changes absolutely everything about what this monster actually is. Nemesis, Resident Evil Apocalypse movie. Every version of Nemesis we've talked about so far has one thing in common. There's nothing left of whoever that tyrant used to be. The parasite takes over, the human disappears, and what's left is a walking weapons platform with zero emotional complexity. The 2004 film decided to throw all of that out the window and ask a question no Resident Evil game has ever bothered with. What if the monster remembers being a person? In Resident Evil Apocalypse, Nemesis isn't built from some anonymous tyrant. He's Matt Addison, an environmental activist who infiltrated Umbrella's facility in the first film. Matt was one of the good guys. He was trying to expose Umbrella's illegal experiments when an advanced licker scratched him during the hive escape, and Umbrella's scientists immediately seized the opportunity. They captured Matt, pumped him full of T-virus, and spent months accelerating and directing his mutation toward military utility. No NE alpha parasite running the show this time. Just straight T-virus infection and a whole lot of Umbrella's finest poking and prodding until what used to be a man became something that could level a city block. And they gave him the toys to do it. This version of Nemesis, portrayed by actor Matthew G. Taylor, carries dual weaponry that makes the game version look modestly armed. Rocket launcher in one hand, a custom-engineered forearm-mounted railgun modeled after a heavily modified minigun in the other. Producer Paul W.S. Anderson described the concept as Nemesis walking around with a gigantic, powerful weapon in each hand, and almost indecisive as to which one to use, which is honestly a pretty fun mental image. Just a 7-foot mutant standing in the middle of Raccoon City like a guy at a buffet who can't decide between the pasta and the chicken. The design takes a more grounded military approach than the games ever did. His protective coat presumably contains Kevlar, providing resistance against high-caliber weapons, explosions, and extreme heat. It's less parasitic horror experiment and more black-budget super soldier project. Umbrella didn't want a monster here. They wanted a controllable asset, which is, not ideal when your controllable asset used to be a human being with strong opinions about your company. Here's where it gets complicated. During combat with Alice, Matt starts waking up. Not fully, not all at once, but gradually. Flashes of recognition, moments of hesitation that shouldn't exist in something Umbrella programmed to kill on command. He begins regaining consciousness and awareness of who he used to be, which is something that has never happened in any game version of Nemesis, not once. The parasite in the games doesn't leave room for that, but the film's version, built on T-virus mutation rather than parasitic brain replacement, apparently left just enough of Matt Addison intact for him to claw his way back to the surface. And then he makes a choice. In the film's climax, with Umbrella attack helicopters bearing down on Alice, the partially conscious Nemesis turns on his creators. He destroys one of the helicopters, protecting the woman he was programmed to kill, and sacrifices himself in the process. A creature designed to be the ultimate weapon decides, in its final moments, to be a person again. It's a fundamentally optimistic take on a character every other version treats as pure monster. The games never give Nemesis a shred of humanity. He's a tool, a biological missile pointed at STARS members. But the film says, no, actually, there's someone in there, and given enough time and enough pain, that someone can fight back. Whether you think that's a beautiful addition to the Nemesis mythology, or a complete betrayal of what makes the creature terrifying, probably depends on how you feel about Paul W.S. Anderson movies in general. I don't know what to tell you, but if you thought translating Nemesis into a movie was a wild creative choice, wait until you see what happened when they dropped him into a fighting game. Nemesis, Marvel vs. Capcom variant? So what happens when you take an unstoppable bioweapon designed to hunt down elite police officers and drop it into a fighting game where it has to play fair? You get the most nerfed version of Nemesis in existence. And honestly, it's kind of hilarious. Nemesis shows up as a playable character in Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and later in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. In both games, he's classified as a big body grappler, which is fighting game speak for huge, slow, hits like a freight train, and gets comboed into oblivion by anyone with a dash. He's got 1,150,000 HP, which sounds massive until you realize that ties him with She-Hulk for 5th place in the game. Fifth, the creature that canonically survives rocket launchers, acid baths, and a literal railgun to the face shares a health tier with She-Hulk. He was originally designed to have the highest vitality in the entire roster, but somewhere during development, that got quietly walked back. Nobody is safe, but here's where the design gets genuinely clever. His signature hyper combo, Bioweapon Assault, transforms Nemesis into a grotesque super form covered in tentacles and tumors. The developers essentially compressed the creature's entire 3-stage mutation arc into a single special attack animation. Every horrifying transformation you witness across the entirety of Resident Evil 3, from humanoid stalker to quadrupedal nightmare to room-sized blob monster, gets condensed into one move that lasts about 4 seconds. Hey, remember those 3 boss fights that traumatized you? Here they are in one combo. You're welcome. And the damage output is no joke. A level 3 X-Factor enhanced bioweapon assault can destroy roughly half of Super Skrull's total health pool in a single application. Half, from one move. A character with the combined powers of the entire Fantastic Four just watches his life bar evaporate because a zombie in a trench coat decided to grow some tumors at him, which is, not ideal. The rocket launcher translates into special moves that work surprisingly well within fighting game mechanics. You can hit standing opponents from full screen, carry downed opponents off the ground for combo extensions, and combined with a ground dash that's deceptively fast for his size, Nemesis can actually apply real pressure. He's not just standing there waiting to get jumped on, he's standing there with a rocket launcher waiting to get jumped on. Big difference. In competitive play, Nemesis typically operates as a point-or-second character. His clothesline rocket assist provides significant combo extension for teammates, and his team hyper-combo version of Bioweapon Assault generates a forced ground bounce that lets the point character extend combos beyond what they'd normally pull off. He's basically a 7-foot-tall support character. Somewhere, Umbrella is furious. Here's the thing. This is probably the most balanced interpretation of Nemesis across any media. His canonical power has been deliberately constrained to fit competitive fighting game design. He can't walk through attacks indefinitely. He can't regenerate mid-round. He can't chase you across the entire map while muttering stars into the void. He has to take turns. He has to respect frame data. He has to lose to Phoenix Wright if the Phoenix Wright player is good enough. And in a weird way, that captures something true about the character. Nemesis was never an independent force of nature. He was always a tool, a weapon deployed for a specific purpose. In Resident Evil, that purpose was eliminating STARS members. In Marvel vs. Capcom, that purpose is landing a command grab and doing 40% of someone's health bar in one combo. Same energy, different context. But if you think competitive balance is the biggest change Nemesis has ever undergone, wait until you see what Capcom did when they rebuilt him from scratch for the Resident Evil 3 remake. Because that version doesn't just look different, it fights different, acts different, and mutates into something the original never even attempted. Nemesis to type? Remake first form. Here's where Capcom decided to throw the entire design philosophy out the window and start fresh. The 1999 Nemesis was unsettling because it looked almost human. The 2020 remake Nemesis is unsettling because it looks like something that crawled out of a medical waste bin. And honestly, both approaches work, but the remake version hits different. When you first encounter the redesigned Nemesis in the 2020 remake, you don't actually see it. Not really. The creature is wrapped entirely in black, body bag-like material that obscures every single physical detail. You know something horrible is underneath. You can hear it. You can feel the weight of it chasing you through Raccoon City. But Capcom makes you wait before they show you the goods. That's brilliant horror pacing. The anticipation of the reveal does more psychological damage than the reveal itself. You're essentially running from a giant trash bag with murder on its mind. And somehow that's terrifying. But then the covering comes off, and you wish it hadn't. The redesigned face is where the remake really separates itself from the original. The teeth are the first thing you notice. Massive, elongated, with extreme gum exposure that makes the creature look like it's permanently snarling. The skull has physically expanded due to the NE alpha parasite's regenerative boost, and that bone growth has literally ripped through the surrounding facial flesh. The nose is twisted at an unnatural angle, shoved aside by a skull that's outgrowing its own skin. Where the original Nemesis had stitched, almost surgical modifications that suggested someone carefully constructed this thing, the remake version looks like the parasite is winning a war against the host body in real time. Tendrils and partial parasite exposure along the shoulder area peek through the remaining covering, immediately telling you everything you need to know about what's happening inside this creature without a single line of dialogue. Here's where it gets really interesting though. The remake Nemesis can do something the original never could. It can implant NE alpha parasites directly into other zombies, creating subordinate creatures that fight alongside it. This fundamentally changes what Nemesis is as a threat. The 1999 version was a lone Terminator. One target, one mission, relentless pursuit. The 2020 version is a spawning entity. It doesn't just chase you, it makes the things around you worse. Every zombie in the area becomes a potential upgrade waiting to happen. You're not just running from Nemesis anymore. You're running from the idea that Nemesis can turn your environment against you. The aggression is cranked up significantly too. The remake structures its entire campaign around more frequent Nemesis encounters, making the creature feel genuinely relentless in a way the original only hinted at. And the arsenal has expanded. Flamethrowers, rocket launchers, weapons that weren't prominently featured in the 1999 gameplay. The original Nemesis had its iconic rocket launcher, and that was mostly it. The remake version walks around like it raided an Umbrella armory on the way out, which, you know, is not ideal for anyone trying to survive. The whole design philosophy boils down to one shift. The 1999 Nemesis said, "What if a tyrant was smart enough to use weapons and track you?" The 2020 Nemesis says, "What if a tyrant was actively decomposing, angry about it, and could also make more monsters?" Both are horrifying, but the remake version feels less like a precision instrument and more like a biological disaster that someone pointed in your general direction and hoped for the best. But if you think the first form is bad, wait until the remake strips away what little humanity this thing has left. Nemesis T-Type Remake Second Form. Most creatures in video games have the decency to get weaker when you blow their limbs off. Nemesis looked at that convention and said, absolutely not. Following enough environmental damage to destroy the protective coat and destabilize the humanoid form entirely, the remake's Nemesis undergoes a forced mutation that essentially rebuilds its skeleton from scratch. The creature's entire architecture reorganizes to support exclusively quadrupedal movement, similar to a large predatory animal. And when I say the redesign is aggressive, I mean the remake version looks almost completely alien compared to the original second form. The classic version, at least, maintained a vaguely recognizable head structure. You could squint and still see something that used to be human in there. The remake abandons any pretense of corrupted humanoid identity. It's just gone. Whatever this thing is now, it has zero interest in reminding you it was once a person. The bone structure undergoes heavy alteration, and the ribcage literally opens up to reveal a glowing internal organ at the creature's core. Whether that's the heart or the NE alpha parasite itself is up for debate, but here's the thing. It doesn't really matter what it is. What matters is what it communicates to the player. That glow is the game telling you you can hurt this thing. It's a visible weak point nested inside an otherwise overwhelming wall of muscle and claw and fury. Smart horror design, honestly, and give the player hope and terror in the same visual. The creature also develops massive claws and elongated tentacles that extend from its mutated body, which is already bad enough. But here's where it gets genuinely ridiculous. Those tentacles aren't just decoration. Nemesis uses them as active weapons, lashing out with reach and speed that a quadrupedal frame shouldn't be able to produce. The thing turned its own parasitic mutations into offensive tools. It's not falling apart, it's upgrading in real time. Every mutation that should be a weakness becomes something else it can hit you with. I don't know what to tell you, but the real shift in the remake's second form isn't just visual, it's mechanical. The clock tower encounter perfectly demonstrates what the developers were going for. Conventional weaponry provides minimal actual damage against this thing. You can empty every round you've got into it and accomplish roughly nothing. The fight design essentially prevents direct combat victory entirely. Instead, you need to stun Nemesis using mine rounds from the grenade launcher, knocking it down long enough to expose that glowing weak point and actually deal real damage. The message is clear either way. Your standard firearms aren't solving this problem, and that's the brilliance of pairing the glowing weak point with the mine round mechanic. One says you can hurt this thing, the other says, but not with your guns, not the way you want to. The game gives you a target and then immediately restricts how you're allowed to hit it. You're not fighting Nemesis in this encounter, you're solving Nemesis. It's a puzzle wearing claws. The original second form was scary because it got bigger and angrier and faster. The remake second form is scary because it stopped being something you could categorize It's not a corrupted human anymore. It's not even a recognizable monster type. It's something entirely new, built from the ground up by a parasite that ran out of ways to fix what was broken and decided to just start over with a completely different blueprint, which is, not ideal when you're the person standing in the room with it. But if you think a quadrupedal nightmare that weaponizes its own parasitic mutations is as bad as it gets, wait until you see what happens when this thing stops holding back entirely. Nemesis, T-Type, Remake Final Form. This is where everything Umbrella built finally collapses under its own weight, and I mean that literally. After being doused in chemicals and consuming massive quantities of organic biomass, including the corpses of dead T-103 tyrants, the Nemesis enters a gigantic slug-like cocoon. And when that cocoon opens, what comes out isn't a creature anymore. It's a room. The thing has become a room-encompassing biological monstrosity that bears almost zero structural similarity to the humanoid figure that once chased Jill Valentine through the streets of Raccoon City, wearing what looked like a trash bag. The head region splits open like a massive blooming flower made of meat, revealing internal structures of genuinely nightmarish proportions. Web-like tendrils anchor the body directly into the surrounding architecture, fusing the creature with the walls, the floor, the ceiling. You're not fighting Nemesis at this point. You're standing inside it. Here's the thing. The NE Alpha parasite has completely given up. Not in the way you'd expect, though. It hasn't died or failed. It's given up on maintaining a cohesive organism. The parasite has abandoned every structural principle it ever followed and gone all in on maximizing sheer biomass and regenerative capacity. Individual body portions can regenerate independently from each other, while the overall mass just keeps expanding based on damage taken and organic material consumed. Shoot it and it grows. Hurt it and it adapts. It's like trying to fight a tumor that gets stronger every time you hit it with chemotherapy, which is, not ideal, and conventional weapons, completely meaningless. The game mechanically forces you to use the experimental electromagnetic gun called Finger, based because nothing else does substantial damage. Your entire arsenal of shotguns, grenades, pistols, all of it might as well be confetti. The only thing that actually hurts this creature is a prototype railgun that Umbrella probably never intended anyone to actually need. But here we are. The fight itself keeps evolving as you're in it. The creature spawns additional pustule-like weak points across its body as the battle progresses, which sounds helpful until you realize it's constantly shifting which ones are exposed and which ones are protected behind physical barriers it manifests over vulnerable spots. So you can't just memorize a pattern and execute. You have to keep reassessing, keep repositioning, keep timing your shots between defensive posture shifts while this thing is actively trying to dissolve you with acid attacks from across the arena. Cool, that's also a thing that happened, but here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. And not in the, oh no, a big monster way, in the existential horror way. Think about what Nemesis was built to do. It had one job: eliminate STARS members. That was the entire reason Umbrella created it. The NE Alpha parasite was implanted, the T-103 host was selected, the weapons were provided, the coat was fitted, and it was dropped into Raccoon City with a single program directive: kill Jill Valentine and every other STARS operative it could find. By this final form, that mission doesn't exist anymore. Not because it was completed, not because it failed, because the creature has mutated so far beyond its original purpose that the concept of mission has become biologically irrelevant. The parasite won the war for control over the host body. It achieved total dominance. But what it won is nothing. There's no intelligence left to execute orders. There's no humanoid structure left to wield weapons. There's no tactical awareness left to track targets. There's just mass, expanding, regenerating, consuming mass with no direction and no endpoint. The weapon outgrew its mission, and that's the real horror of Nemesis. Not that it's powerful. Every Resident Evil boss is powerful. The horror is that all of that power has no purpose left. It's a billion-dollar bioweapon that has become nothing more than a spreading stain on the floor of a disposal plant, eating dead things and getting bigger for absolutely no reason. Umbrella's greatest achievement in parasitic bioengineering reduced to a mindless growth that doesn't even remember the name it used to scream. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.